Hi, and welcome to Nevaeh's Nightmare. So, what happens when someone is so fixated with their health and well-being that they would do anything to maintain their health? In this episode, we will dive into the story of two sisters and a sadistic doctor from the early 1900s. Also, trigger warning, this story does contain eating disorders and assault and other stuff, so if you need to click out, go ahead and do that. Dora and Claire Williams, 37 and 33, were sisters from Liverpool who were obsessed with keeping a pristine health. The women were said to be very gorgeous, smart, and lively. The sisters were also very rich for the 20th century and were seen as eccentric for the time, like not wearing corsets, and they were also vegetarian. The sisters did have some hard times growing up. Both mother and father died before Claire had even turned 13. Their only motherly or parental figure they had was their governess, Margaret Conway. The sisters' Scottish grandfather had left them over $1 million and loads of property. The women also had some interesting outlooks on medicine. They believed that medical licensed doctors were, in their own words, fools. The women lived by what is now called a clean living movement, aka eating natural untouched foods, never indulging or overeating. Sugar and alcohol were also not accepted. While the women were staying at the Empress Hotel in Vancouver, British Columbia, they saw an ad in the paper about a fasting treatment by a woman named Dr. Linda Hazzard. Dr. Hazzard ran her own sanitarium without the assistance of men, and Dora and Claire loved this. Her treatments involved intense dieting and fasting. Dr. Hazzard claimed that her treatments cured cancer, heart disease, tuberculosis, insanity, and epilepsy. Dr. Hazzard also had her own book, which was titled Fasting for the Cure of Disease. Claire wrote to Dr. Hazzard about her and Dora's health concerns like stomach aches and knee pain, and a few days later, Hazzard's book arrived in the mail. Claire and Dora once again reached out to the doctor, but this time they asked if Hazzard would help treat their illnesses. Dr. Hazzard replied not only wanting to help them, but to take them out to Seattle and eventually move them into her new sanitarium when it was ready. Claire and Dora went to Seattle and didn't tell anyone. February 27, 1911, the sisters arrived at Dr. Linda Hazzard's office in downtown Seattle. When the girls had met Hazzard, their impression was of a taller woman wearing a plain white dress and was in her 40s. As soon as the women had entered Hazzard's office, she started to diagnose them. She told the girls that their conditions were quite serious and needed immediate treatment. Both girls did question Hazzard and ask why she wouldn't want to examine them. Hazzard responded with, "It is no use to do an examination for any organic disease until the fast has proceeded for some time." The sisters went forward with the first treatment called the osteopathic treatment. The treatment was really just this doctor pounding on the girls' heads, back, and foreheads. The sisters left the appointment with a new health and diet regimen and moved into their apartment that Hazzard had arranged for them next to her office, that they also had to rent. Boil tomatoes in a quart of water to make a veggie broth, but with no salt, sugar, or seasoning, and a smidge of butter. The women were instructed to drink 2 cups of the broth a day, and over time slowly add asparagus broth and orange juice. Nothing else was allowed for several weeks, or when the doctor said that it was okay for them to eat, which was not often. Lots of super fast walking was also advised to rid the poison. Now, this doctor also had a $60 fee for each girls, and Claire and Dora would see Hazzard at her office 5 days a week, on top of paying rent, by the way. Anyways, the sisters endured pummeling massages, internal massages, which were just enemas, and boiling hot baths. The enemas could last for 30 minutes to days at a time, and the girls would often faint from the pain. As the girls continued with treatment, their bodies started to wear down. Fainting and falling over were common enough to be ignored, and they began to lose their ability to walk. The doctors would perform treatments in Claire and Dora's apartment, and the neighbors were scared. Sounds of agony came from the rooms, and the girls appeared skeletal. Hazzard had a loyal nurse that worked under her and helped take care of the girls. Her name was Neely Sherman. Dr. Hazzard confided in Nurse Sherman a lot. Hazzard stated, "The girls were in a bad way and it shouldn't be long," in reference to Dora and Claire. She also told Neely about another patient who had just died and she was performing the autopsy. Hazzard had full control over the girls and convinced Dora that she was crazy and unfit to take care of herself. Considering Dora was hardly able to stay awake, Hazzard became fixated on Dora and Claire's finances. No one was connected to Dora and Claire's finances but themselves, so it made it easy for Hazzard to manipulate her way in. The girls were moved to the Olala Sanitarium on April 22nd, that Hazzard called the Wilderness Heights Institute of Natural Therapeutics. Olala locals called it Starvation Heights. Both sisters weighed about 70 pounds by the time they got to the sanitarium, and Claire could barely speak. Hazzard's attorney assisted in helping Dora write a letter to her governess, and the letter was updating the will. Their will was to leave a portion of their estate to Dr. Hazzard and to be cremated by Hazzard. Hazzard placed the sisters at the sanitarium and put them in an attic space, and as the girls grew weaker, Hazzard separated them by a screen, and they were to be separated at all times. Claire kept signing over more and more financials over to Hazzard, and the governess got suspicious and went to Olala. Claire ended up passing away and was said to have only weighed 50 pounds by her passing. On June 1st, the governess arrived at Olala, and Hazzard's husband was waiting for her. He told the governess that Claire had died and Dora had gone insane. She was taken to Hazzard's offices and was sick with grief. Hazzard had explained that the autopsy she did on Claire in great detail, and she also said that Claire had been embalmed, which at the time was not something that was widely accepted yet, and the Australian governess didn't even know about embalming. Claire's embalmed body was at Butterworth & Sons funeral home, which we will talk about in another video, I promise, when the governess was shown Claire. It wasn't Claire. It was someone else wearing Claire's dress. After Claire died, Dora was moved to a different, much smaller cabin out in the woods, and the girl's uncle had come to the sanitarium after learning about Claire's death, and Dr. Hazzard strictly advised him not to speak to Dora about finances because she was insane and would die soon. At Claire's funeral, Dora was not allowed to attend, and their uncle confirmed that it was not Claire in the casket. The governess moved into the tiny cabin with Dora and was sneaking her food at every given moment and was learning more and more disturbing things about Dr. Hazzard. I'm not going to tell you what Dr. Hazzard had done to Claire in her last moments because it is very brutal, but Dora's uncle and governess wanted to get Dora out of the sanitarium. Hazzard claimed Dora owed her thousands and her family paid Hazzard $900, and Dora fled on July 22nd, 1911, weighing only 60 pounds. The British consul was not happy about their higher class being tormented, so they started to investigate Dr. Hazzard and her past patients. In a trial for guardianship over Dora, Hazzard was discovered to not be a doctor with no medical degree. It was also found that Hazzard and Butterworth & Sons had some sort of agreement that would let Hazzard do what she wanted to with the bodies as she pleased. We can't be 100% sure if the body of Claire was actually hers. The funeral home could have replaced her body with someone who wasn't 50 pounds and looked less thin, or the process of embalming just genuinely made her unrecognizable, as sometimes that does happen. On February 4th, Linda Hazzard was convicted of manslaughter and sent to prison for 2 years and was released in December of 1915 and attracted more customers. She used the money from her book and clients to open a giant sanitarium that burned down in 1935. She continued to kill and torment patients until her death in 1938. She died from trying her own healing methods to try to heal herself. In the end, Dora got away from Dr. Hazzard, but Claire didn't. The women were manipulated and pretty much tortured because of the insanity of Dr. Linda Hazzard and their own obsession with being in perfect health. Thank you so much for watching Nevaeh's Nightmare. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and let me know what you think about Dr. Linda Hazzard down in the comments. I think she was an evil woman, and she tormented those poor girls, and those poor girls probably just had some mental health issues going on that they needed to get checked out. But I want to know what you think, so let me know in the comments.